Infinito. Sir Lawrence Gardner. The Infinito has the pleasure to introduce you to Brazilian readers. Please, can you say to them what kind of work are you on now? Sir Lawrence. Following the My Books, Bloodline of the Holy Grail 1996 and Genesis of the Grail Kings 1999, both now international bestsellers. I have been continuing my research and writing for this book series, especially with regard to the genealogical records in respect of the Messianic dynasty of Jesus, his ancestors and descendants. My latest work has just been released in Britain, entitled Realm of the Ring Lords. This book brings together for the very first time in one arena the mysteries of the legendary quests for the Sacred Ring and the Holy Grail. Greater than from Arthurian romance to the world of J.R.R. Tolkien, author of The Lord of the Rings. These stories are enveloped within the magical fairy lore of elfdom. However, the myths are based on no mere fantasy, but on an engaging and continual history of real characters and events, dealing with numerous aspects, from Sleeping Beauty to Robin Hood and Count Dracula. The book reveals how a prestigious sovereign heritage has been strategically suppressed by parliamentary and church dictate, facilitated by a fraudulent document which has controlled all monarchical and governmental practices in Western Europe for over 1200 years. This document, known as the Donation of Constantine, was issued by the Vatican in the year 751 and is the authority by which the Pope is proclaimed to be the world's highest-ranking person, thereby granting the Church seniority over all kings, queens and governments. It was the very document which gave the Church itself the appointed right to murder people in their thousands during the centuries of its brutal Inquisition. Infinito. What kind of secret had you discovered when working on to 33 European royal families? Sir Lawrence. The 33 royal families are represented by an organization called the European Council of Princes, and it is this council to which I am attached as the presidential representative in Britain. The council was founded just after World War II in 1946. Its objective was that the royal families of Europe, whether reigning or dispossessed, would band together to uphold their country's various national written constitutions on behalf of the people. This was to ensure that extreme despotic factions such as Hitler's German Reich would never gain the upper hand again. Today, the Council exists as a constitutional advisory body within the European Union, and its current president from 1992 is H.R.H. Prince Michael of Albany, Scotland, head of the Royal House of Stuart. Some years ago, when studying and collating the genealogical records of some of these royal families, it became very clear to me that they emanated from a common base. This base, it transpired, was the royal house of Judah, the family of King David, Solomon and Jesus. Even more surprisingly, certain descents, especially the early royalty of France, sprang from Jesus himself, and from his brothers, particularly from his brother James, whose descendants became a reigning dynasty in Britain. On then studying the early records of the Roman Church, it became apparent that the emperors and popes established a purposeful strategy to eliminate the messianic family. The church records state that the family member should be hunted down and put to the sword. Infinito, if you please, may you give us those families' names. Are they Desposini families? Sir Lawrence D.H.E. for Gospels with which we are familiar today were selected by the church bishops in AD 397 at the Council of Carthage from a choice of very many Gospels. The limited selection was made on the basis that Gospels which upheld the status of women in religious or community society should be excluded. The Church implemented its own rule of celibacy for priests, and women were condemned as being second-class subjects. This meant that the marriage of Jesus and Mary Magdalene as given in early texts could be strategically ignored and, as a result, their descendants could also be ignored, leaving the Church to reign supreme with its male-dominated structure. However, the descendant family existed and the Church called them the Desposini. In France, or Gaul as it was then called, the early descendants of Jesus and Mary Magdalene were known as the Fisher Kings, or Priest Kings. Greater than from them, the descendant called Maracus founded the Merovingian royal house who reigned in France from AD 446 until 751 when they were deposed by the Church under the terms of the forged donation of Constantine. From the Merovingians many later European royal houses descended, the most senior of which was Scotland's royal house of Stuart. They reigned from 1371 until 1688 when, finally, the Church managed at last to depose them in favor of installing its own puppet monarchy in Britain. Today, it is practically impossible to identify true Desposinic strains because intermarriage through the centuries has diluted the blood of all lines. However, the majority of existing royal houses in Europe can be traced back via these intermarriages to common ancestors of early times. Currently, the Council of Princes includes royal representatives from the houses of France, Scotland, Belgium, Prussia, Portugal, Netherlands, Romania, Spain, Sweden, Austria, Denmark, Italy,